Okay, great. So welcome everybody. Monday morning. Again, this is a meeting of the Vermont Climate Council's Steering Committee. We have an agenda online for today, and I will just drop it in the chat right now for everybody here. Okay. All right, so that's our agenda today, and we have a number of things. I'll share my screen with it. We can do our usual housekeeping and minutes approval. Jane's office has prepared a draft of the annual legislative report that needs to be sent in. We're going to look at that, and then as a first look, and then the council will look at it next week as a second look. It's due at the end of next week. We're then going to look at this sketch of the sort of now through the end of March to figure out how we're going to use council meetings to get to this finish line, at least the March finish line of a draft updated plan. So we look forward to looking at that document that we were prepared. We specifically wanted to talk about, as part of this council meeting pieces, managing public comment at council meetings. And we've had some previous conversations about it at the council level. And there's some additional ideas we put on the page. We wanted to talk about those with you. And then a few other items, just look at this document again, the writing assignments document, and talk very specifically about that and make sure we're all on the same page. There's some other housekeeping here about appointments to subcommittees. And that's it. There was, Jane had just mentioned that since Bram is stepping down, that means there'll be a vacancy on this steering committee as well. And so maybe we need to just do a quick check-in on that. And there's also a survey that we've prepared for the full council ahead of the meeting. We'll talk about that when we look at the sketch of the next 5 council meetings, but we'll show you a survey that probably was going to go out today to help prep up the meeting for Monday. All right, that's it. Any questions about our agenda before we dive into it? There will be public comment at the end. Okay, great. Let's go ahead and dive in. Minutes. Oh, by the way, Happy New Year, everybody. Sorry about that. It's good to see everyone. I'm all business this morning. I'm sorry. It's good to see folks. Our December minutes are here. I'd welcome if anybody has friendly amendments to them, concerns. Let me just give a moment for folks, if you haven't read them, to click through. Any concerns about these minutes or any requests for a little bit more time to review them?
I'll just say they looked good to me. I didn't notice anything that would suggest a revision. So I think they will be ready.
Thanks, Jared.
Yeah, I didn't have any comments either.
Nor did I.
Great.
I abstained because I wasn't at the meeting. Bruce Wilson.
Okay. Bruce, quick question, Bruce, and sorry, this is me having a little Monday morning glitch. Help me understand your role, Bruce.
Well, I was appointed to be a part of this committee, and I'm also Vermont Human Rights Commissioner.
Excellent. Jane, help me out in terms of appointments. Where is Bruce supposed to be?
Bruce, do you serve on the Just Transition Subcommittee?
Yeah, I do too. Yes, I do.
Excellent. Yeah. So Bruce, that's excellent. And I think actually you're not technically a member of the steering committee of the council, as you are a member of that Just Transitions group. And it's great that you're here in these meetings. I'm just to be clear, I think that's the case, unless I have my picture wrong here.
Yeah, the steering committee is just 6 individuals. And they represent only counselors from the council, from the different appointing bodies, yes. But again, like David said, happy that you're here for comment.
Thanks, Bruce. Okay. Any concerns with the minutes before we just treat them as approved? All right. Great. Thank you. Jane, do you want me to share my screen with this report?
Yeah, maybe,
or just
yes,
drop
and
the screen?
or drop the screen for 1 minute, maybe.
Even better.
So, morning, everybody. As David said, Happy New Year. Nice to see everyone. So the legislative report is due on January 15th, as per usual. I wanted to apologize for getting it up so late, and especially for folks not having probably significant time to review it. But the betterment of it is that we have this week. And so I wanted to start by acknowledging what the process normally calls for, and then what we'd like to do this week, and then what we can strive to start to do this morning if needed. So the legislative report is posted. We typically try to have, as process is with the council, have 2 looks at a document before we approve it. I wanted to start by acknowledging that because this was not reviewed by the council back in December at the December council meeting, that our request to you all this morning is that this steering committee serve as that initial review and editing body in an effort to see if we can have a final document for the council to review next Monday at their meeting. So if we need to have a short sort of emergency meeting of the council between next Monday and the 15th, or shortly thereafter, and let the legislature know that we'll be late, we can certainly do that. We have done that in the past. But the effort would be that through all of you and your edits, both today and in the days coming this week, that we can improve upon this document and say that the steering committee has reviewed and edited this document, bring it to the council next Monday for approval, barring any additional edits that we could take in real time, and then advance it to the legislature on the statutory deadline of January 15th. So I just wanted to start and acknowledge the starting place for today, and then I'm happy to walk you through the document. And if that all makes sense, my request to you all would be that we would see edits from you all by the end of the day Wednesday. And that's the timeline I'm going to propose right now, and we can also talk about that. And then I would have time to revise, edit the document by the end of the day Thursday, so the council can have it posted with some time to review prior to Monday's meeting. So I wanted to start with that process, pause, hear from Jared and others, and then happy to remind you what is in this report as follows: typical annual updates.
Thanks, Jane. Jared?
Thanks, David. Thanks, Jane. Just a process question and suggestion. I wonder about the possibility of not just sending this draft to the steering committee, but sending it to the full council so that they would have, I understand the time frame challenge. I'm just trying to put myself in the shoes of a counselor who's not on the steering committee, who may have input. And if the first time they're seeing it is a few days before the meeting and then they're being asked to vote on it, I don't want to be dogmatic about the kind of a document coming up in 2 meetings to be voted on, given the short time frame. But I do think if there's a way that, just an email to the full council could be sent out with the draft, and counselors could be invited to provide written comments on the same timeline as the steering committee, it would just give more of an opportunity. I don't know how many folks would take that up. But I wonder if that's an adaptation to the process that would be welcome. I think that just putting myself in the shoes of non-steering committee council members, I would be more comfortable with that.
Thanks, Jared. That makes sense to others? We could pop it in, Liz Amler could send an email to everyone saying, hey, this is what's happening, asking for some comment by same date, Wednesday afternoon. And we'll look at a final approval of a new draft in next Monday. Does that work? Okay. Thanks, Jared.
No objection.
Thanks, Bram.
Yeah, I
Okay.
just think that as a steering committee, we try to have a broad cross section of representation of the different council committees and or subcommittees and task groups, but there may be information that's drafted in the report that one of us isn't as familiar with. And so I just think the more eyes, given the breadth of the content that it covers, the better.
Okay. Anything else? This got posted up like Friday afternoon, so I recognize it's a stretch if folks have had a chance to look at it or not. Jane, we don't have a super ton of time to do a detailed walkthrough, but we could do a quick walkthrough if you wanted to.
I'll defer to you all.
Would it be helpful, steering committee members, to just do a quick walkthrough on the screen of what's in this document right now? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, I think an initial kind of orientation and outline of the document, and kind of Jane, you talking through any kind of context or rationale that you think is relevant and helpful.
Yep.
And I
Any
just
other
want to
comments?
note that we do have to keep trucking in this agenda if we're going to finish. So I would say let's do this as the efficient version of this walkthrough, if you don't mind.
Yep. So the first few pages is sort of standard pro quo that we've included in the last few years, backgrounds on the GWSA, acknowledging that there are new legislators every time who might pick up this document, and we orient them to what the requirements of the law are, the requirements of the council, and the responsibilities there within. From there, it
Can we
flows
just
into.
pause?
Yeah.
Sorry to interrupt, Jane. I'm just wondering, can we pause on the specific language that's in the act in terms of what the report should cover? I know that there's a due date for that. Does it just, I'm having trouble recalling, I don't have it in front of me. Does it just say a report by January 15th, or is there additional
On
detail?
council progress and details. I'm not sure if David, if we would have to scroll back up to what it says, but I think it's supposed to be an annual progress report on what the way that I view this in pragmatic terms is that it's an annual progress report. Yeah, on what the Climate Council is up to. Any other questions on that? Okay, so this section is a new section this year, acknowledging that typically the last few years we've just acknowledged that the plan was adopted on December 1st of 2021, and that we're working to implement through state government and other actions in the legislature recommendations in the plan. This section, obviously, folks should look at and provide feedback on, speaks to sort of the process and the work that occurred over the last year, largely in the subcommittees to develop recommendations, and then links to, if you haven't seen it, Sophie has done an excellent job of updating our website that really directs people to what the timeline was over the last year and where we're going as a climate council to build the climate action plan, first the draft by March, and then the updated plan by July 1st. So it links to that website. And just as a sort of practice, and you all, I welcome feedback on, we have typical guidance, and Secretary Moore can speak to this, about keeping reports concise and shorter. So I tend to err on the side of links in the report to let folks dive into more detail on different topics where and if they're interested, rather than going into extensive detail in the report. So this next chapter on implementation is one that we've focused on in the past. Jared, this is one that you've helped add language to in the past, you and Julie. So just draw attention to this. I pulled in the list of bills that Secretary Moore provided as an update with links to the Climate Action Plan at the June meeting of last year, and added some short summaries about what those bills intend to accomplish. I also added this paragraph, as is a new practice of the Climate Office, is we developed one, and in the process of developing a new one this year that tries to discern all the new investment in state government going to climate action work. It is not intended to say everything government is doing for climate action, but rather new investments in climate action that you can find in the state budget. So this link is to the report we developed last year. We're in the process of developing a new one this year, and that we tried to speak to some of the benefits of those funds in implementing the plan. Rulemaking, this section was silent last year because we had just really focused on the year before advancing Advanced Clean Cars 2 and Advanced Clean Trucks. This year, I just noted the work that our office is doing as pertains to the life cycle analysis protocol and development of a rule around application of that. I checked this over with our attorney about how to add the language here appropriately, and so this is here. And then from here, it really flows with direct either updates that we're required to advance from the GWSA, such as the Climate Toolkit and the Municipal Vulnerability Index, and then any other technical analyses that are in service to either the Climate Action Plan or the GWSA in large part. So many of these things were included in the report last year, but weren't completed. So you'll find links to the complete reports, technical analyses now, and summaries of those, as well as updates to the Cap and Invest work and the measuring and assessing progress tool, which are not done, but ongoing, and related again to the GWSA and the Climate Action Plan. And then finally, it's just the next steps about what the council is working on and the intent to update the Climate Action Plan by July 1st. And that's it. That's my high level overview.
Well done.
To orient you to it.
Beautiful.
But happy to take questions or concerns or overarching structural comments now, perhaps, and then look to the edits via email.
Yeah, let's just take a few minutes to do this and then switch gears. But any quick reactions for Jane that you'd want to say now versus provide in comments over the next 2 days? And I see Jared's request in the chat. That's great. Jared.
Yeah, just wanted to make sure that got seen, that it would be helpful to have a Word document for editing and suggesting track changes. The other thing I'm wondering, just from a process perspective or logistics, I wonder if it would be helpful to add in is, of course, the legislative leadership committee chairs can and will invite witnesses as they wish, but I wonder if it's worth putting in the agreement that we had made and that we had documented around requests for testimony coming to the appointees from that body, so that we can do that through the steering committee. So, requests for the Senate coming to Kelly and I. For the House, it would have been Bram and Liz, but Liz and whoever else, just to help with the process of, if there's somebody in the legislature reading this who's not familiar, so they have a starting point rather than randomly emailing the whole council, or of course, it'd be different if there are requests for agency testimony, but in terms of on behalf of the council or council subcommittees, that has been our process in the past, is that those requests come to the council appointees from those bodies.
Thanks, Jared. Yeah, we can point to our process document on that, which we have some language about that. Secretary Moore?
I wanted to suggest that we might consider adding a section at the end on challenges. I think it's a good opportunity to flag some of those concerns for the legislature, including kind of the slow appointment process, and so our challenge in maintaining full membership, but also just the workload concerns that counselors repeatedly have, or subcommittee members right now have repeatedly raised. And, I think this is our kind of opportunity to raise awareness about that. That said, I think if legislatively appointed members don't want to raise the workload concerns, we can frame it in terms of state agency issues, because those are real, and our ability to staff the subcommittees at the level that is needed given the scope of work is a significant and ongoing challenge from my perspective. But I do think we need to flag that here.
Thanks, Julie. Secretary Clark?
I think I have a more process-related question. Ultimately, who is the author of this report to the legislature? Is it the steering committee or the climate council itself?
That's a great question. Jane?
I think it's the Climate Council itself.
Right. Written by the Climate Action Office on its behalf. Okay. All right. So to round this up, written comments by the end of Wednesday. Jane will get a new version out Thursday. Council will review it and sign off. And as we typically do, we'll sign off on a set of notes on Monday to say, with these revisions, we're comfortable this going to the legislature. And if we can't, for whatever reason, then we'll need to schedule a short meeting to finalize. All right. Thanks, everyone. Thanks, Jane. All right. The next piece was trying to sketch out our work ahead. Jane and Liz and I wrote something up that is attached to the agenda, and I can go in and share my screen with it. And perhaps the way forward is to have me walk through this. Before I do, Jane, I know you're going to drop off the top of the hour. Is there anything you want to say about the sort of look ahead over the next 3 months before you drop?
I think it was really helpful for David and Liz and I to talk through this. It intends to sketch out sort of the work between now and the end of March to develop a draft. So it sort of hints at a process that's now transitioning up from the subcommittees to the Climate Council and the work needed in that space. So my only comment, David, is that I would hope that from this meeting, we can make sure that the arc of the work makes sense to the steering committee and then dive a little deeper. I'm wondering if it was an oversight on our part, is there a detailed agenda for next Monday for the steering committee to approve embedded there? But if not, make sure it's there. Yeah,
Yes.
Gets done. And anything that we might be missing. So there's a lot happening. So just trying to see it all through. For us, this was really helpful to see how we get from here to a draft in March.
Great. Okay. So perhaps I'll just share my screen with this doc, and I'll walk folks through it, and then we can pause along the way. And definitely when we get to the end, we can take some time. There's some suggestions in here that will require a few changes to your calendar potentially. So I want to make some particular emphasis on those. Again, the intent is getting to a draft document by late March, early April. We suggest for next Monday's meeting that we're going to focus on these issues. We don't have actual timing on these, but these are the items of the agenda. The biggest piece of this would be to focus on circling back to all those priority actions that were shared in the December meeting from the subcommittees. And the way we want to do this is today send out a survey mechanism to all the counselors. And the way that survey, I can show it on my screen in just a moment, but what that's going to do is it just sort of chunks up the different priority actions that we saw on last month and asks these four or these options, whether you're saying, hey, this is looking good, it's coming together, or looking good, I have some comments, and there's a comment box down below. This needs further discussion. I have serious concerns. And the reason we're trying to do this is get a sense of the temperature. This is not holding anybody to a particular point of view at this point. We're just temperature checking here and trying to understand where we should dedicate our time, right? Because there's probably about 50 of those priority actions that were presented last month. And so we want to focus January 13th, next Monday, on the ones where people are feeling like, wow, we need a little conversation on this. We're not super comfortable on this right now. Or there's a lot of work to make this better. So assuming you all are okay with that, we'll send that out today and give folks the week to answer that. And they'll need to finish it by the end of Thursday. So we have Friday to really sketch out the agenda appropriately for next Monday. Okay, so that's the key piece of next Monday's meeting, is really leaning into these priority actions. We'll also do the work on the report to the legislature. We'll finalize any writing assignment issues, and we want to confirm an approach to how we're doing public comment at the council meetings over the next, 5 meetings or so. Then 2 weeks later, we have a meeting. This was supposed to be virtual. I will do a quick pause that I understand now that anything that is virtual, like we say this is virtual, that A&R actually will make a physical location available if anybody wants to attend in person. So it's actually virtual plus hybrid option. It's just, I think there's been a rule change, and we need to make sure that we're making available some space. However, on January 27th, we are recommending switching that virtual meeting to an in-person, all of us together, and maybe doing it for a slightly more than 3 hours. And this is because by then we will have the detailed recommendation, the Excels from each of the subcommittees. Most of them didn't get them to you in time in December, but they're working feverishly on them now. And we need to spend some time reading. We need to spend some time really getting deep into the content there. This is above and beyond the priority actions. And we're going to find ways to focus on the specific things that counselors feel they need to lift up within those detailed set of recommendations. We also are feeling like the council needs some time to just connect. And my colleague Indra, who's been working in the facilitation team and also the public engagement team, he and I have some ideas about what that might look like, of just you all as a council starting to build a sense of shared purpose as you go into this critical juncture of developing a draft update together. So that's what we're imagining 27th, but it means switching your calendars to be in person and probably adding an hour or so to the time. The next meeting is 2 weeks later, February 10th, back virtually, again with an option. There we have some technical work we need to focus on. The Cap and Invest study will be done by then, and the implications for the climate action plan. There'll be an update, but not a final piece on the business as usual study. And we'll be able to, writing's going to be fast and furious at that point. So we can offer some guidance to the writing groups as they're working on chapters and things. All right, now, early March 10th is our next meeting. This is a crucial one. And it's important that we have draft chapters ready by March 1st to share, and then we can do a big in-person meeting to go through that content and understand where we're feeling really excited about it and where we're feeling like we need to work as a council to iron out issues. So this is a big, important in-person meeting that is going to really dive into that draft content. And we'll talk more about those chapters in a moment. And this is where we say, hey, these are the issues we're going to need to work on before we feel confident signing off on March 31st on a draft document. We also need to confirm our method for signing off on a draft document. Again, this is not the final document, but we do need to make sure we're all on the same page about what it's going to look like to say, yes, let this thing go out in the world, and let's get feedback on it in April. In March, we will have the business as usual and the scenario modeling done. We can look at that, and we'll do an exercise for final review and sign off on the public comment materials in the updated document. Okay, I'm going to stop there and we can talk about public comment in a moment, but I just want to pause and say that's the flow of meetings that we see as necessary to get through all the content that's come out of is coming out of the subcommittees, and get us in a position where we feel confident we can put something out there as a draft document for review in April. All right. Why don't I just stop sharing for a moment, and just so we can see each other, and then I'm happy to pull that back up. I am curious, when you hear me walk through that sequence of meetings, what reactions do you have? Does that seem like the right approach? Are you comfortable making some of those shifts, like, for instance, making our second meeting in January an in-person one? other feedback that you might have about the flow of meetings. Is everybody in shock about the amount of work ahead? Jared?
I'm happy to defer to somebody else, if Secretary Moore, if you want to start.
Oh, go ahead.
I think that it generally sounds good and looks right, given the work before us. So thanks for putting that flow together. I just had a question about is especially for the ones that will primarily be virtual, is that is is there an identified time slot yet? Would that continue to be that 11 to 2? Okay.
They should be in our calendars already.
Okay. And then the only other thing that I noticed in terms of the suggested content when it comes to, I know this will already be the case with kind of what we're calling as shorthand, the Cap and Invest study, that's got its own review process. But in terms of the BAU, business as usual modeling updates that have agenda items on 2 of the council meetings, I would suggest that before those go before the full council, there be opportunities to present and get feedback on that information, that process to the cross-sector and science and data subcommittees. So that would just be a sub issue around scheduling. It wouldn't affect the full council, but I think is in terms of the subcommittees that have engaged in that in the past and have the most relevant experience and expertise to engage in that. I just think it'll be important that there's a review and process that for those subcommittees in particular to see that material before it's before the full council.
Okay. Great.
Can I just tag on to that, David?
Yeah.
There may be a timing challenge there. As folks know, we had a hard time getting under contract with Stockholm Environmental Institute due to some international contracting requirements, and just want to be upfront saying, I'm not sure. Certainly, Jared, I think it would have to be a joint meeting of those 2 subcommittees. I can't imagine we could pull off 2, and I frankly am not sure we'll be able to pull off 1, just given the very short runway they have to do the work. Like literally, I don't think they started it until last month. So appreciating that's not ideal. That's the hand we're playing right now.
Okay. I think what I'm hearing as well is just like those subcommittees will have important information to provide. And if for timing reasons, it's not possible to do that prior to the council, it happens maybe at the council as well, where the CS with the cross-sector mitigation, science and data are there. Part of that. Ideally, it happens before. Okay. Great. Other reflections on the Julie, did you have other reflections on the sequence of meetings?
Just a couple. I think laying that out like that is really helpful and important, and making sure that not just like I know those meetings are on my calendar, but making sure the full extent of those meetings are on folks' calendars as soon as possible. I think is really important. Very supportive of having an in-person meeting. One of the thoughts was just if folks are traveling for that, to try to take as good advantage of it as possible. And I don't know if it makes sense to even look to make it a 6-hour meeting instead of a 4-hour meeting. I feel like in the handful of times we've been together, we've never had enough time. And so, once you're in for 4 hours plus travel, maybe it makes sense to make it 6 hours plus travel, was just going to be my observation.
That's great. And before I go to Kelly's hand, how do folks feel about that last point in particular? Just like, hey, let's be realistic. We're going to need the time. We might as well. If everybody's driving in, let's extend it. Does that seem reasonable? Jared's thumbs up on that, Kelly. Yeah. Okay. I can't tell with Bram. All right. Thumbs up from Bram. Okay, great. All right. Thanks, Julie. Kelly?
Yeah, thanks for that point, Secretary Moore, about because I'm one of the people who tends to have to travel a longer distance. So especially if there's winter weather, you have to brave to get there. It's like, well, let's stay here long enough and then brave it on the way back, and it just feels more worthwhile. On that note, I just had a question. We have a confirmed location for January 27th for switching to in-person?
Yeah, I think Liz looks like she's in another meeting right now, but Liz can confirm. A&R, I think it would be that facility we've used in the past.
I think it's on my calendar as 109 State Street, which is the Pavilion office building, but it'll be in the Montpelier area.
Yeah, that's what I figured, but just wanted to check.
Yeah.
So I can mentally prepare for that. I don't
Yeah,
like to leave
Montpelier, I think is the short answer.
And then I was also just looking through, I guess you didn't really walk through it, but the public comment stuff at the end of that document looks really solid to me. So thanks for putting that together.
Thanks, Kelly. And let's make sure we spend a specific moment talking about that. Okay, so anything else on the flow? And you see kind of what we're trying to do, like next week, what we have are those priority actions that were presented in December. Let's really spend time on those. End of January, let's go deep into the weeds of the other pieces on those Excel documents that are all the pathway strategies and actions, and lift up anything that really needs conversation, right? February, the technical analysis. Early March, now we've got our draft content, our draft chapters. Let's spend some time really going into that, making sure we're saying things we're all comfortable with or having the conversation we need to have. And then late March is let's sign off on this material. That's the flow. Okay. Any last things before we jump into that piece on the public comment? All right. Thanks, everyone. I appreciate that. So what I'm taking away is extend the length of the in-person meetings to 5 or 6 hours. And that seems like a good idea to you all. I think it seems like a good idea to me too. Let's be clear about location. Montpelier is almost always, I think, I know for January, that's what we have. And I think for March, that's what we'll do as well. Okay. And the issue that Jared brought up about, the cross-sector mitigation and science and data both will have really important input on that technical work. So we need to bake that into our process to get their input. All right. So let me pull the screen back up with public comment. And this is, oh, that's not the right screen. Those are my notes. Hang on one second. This is the right screen. Okay. So this is something that Just Transition Subcommittee has been helpful with, and the subcommittees been trying to be more thoughtful about how to use public comment during the meetings. We talked about it at the council level of adopting what the subcommittees are doing. We actually said, yeah, that looks great, but the document isn't actually talking specifically about the council, so we punted on actually approving it. In our December meeting, we had sort of a window into the kinds of ways public comment might happen as we get deep into substance, right? And I think there was a couple things that happened there. One is there is helpful comment that comes in during meetings. We want that to come in a timely fashion during the meeting. And two, it could be very time consuming to do unlimited public comment in our meetings. And we do have multiple channels for receiving comment, both channels such as a website comment form and a voicemail box. And we also have all the work that the CBI team is doing with the Climate Action Office and engaging diverse Vermonters on these issues, right? And we've talked about that throughout the last year. So this was sort of me scratching my head and talking with folks about how could we do what we want to do with public comment, but not have it completely eat alive our meeting time. And so here are the bullets that are being suggested. that we absolutely have dedicated public comment time on each agenda, probably towards the middle of the agenda. We should schedule a predictable amount of time that's not like 5 or 10 minutes, but is a more significant amount of time. I was suggesting in the 20 to 30 minute range in each meeting. We should have clear time limits per commenter that are expressed at the beginning, and there are tools that we can be even more explicit with like little timers and things to help people stay within those limits. And we would end the public comment period when that time is up. And if folks still have their hands up, we would direct them to the other channels for providing comment, like the ones I just mentioned. We would also, at the beginning of each climate council meeting, dedicate time to reviewing comments that came in through those channels. Right. So we would at the top of every meeting say, hey, this is everything we've received in summary form, here's some themes. And we could have Sophie from the Climate Action Office or someone from my team dedicate, sort of do a nice summary and say, this is what we've got since we last met. Right. So we really could lift up what's coming in through those channels. And also in the same way, for all the activities that we were doing, we create those summaries. We've looked at those before as a council. So we create a little space at the beginning of each meeting to do that. Maybe we make that our just transition space at the beginning of each meeting. There's this tentative one at the bottom, which I'm interested in feedback on, where it is often that we have similar voices speaking in each meeting. And so if there are more hands, we can already tell, like 30 hands go up and we're not going to get to them all, that we could have a system of the facilitator calling on folks first who haven't been speaking in the last couple meetings. That's a tricky thing to do. I'll just put it out there as a possibility, as a way of getting a range of voices at the council. So food for thought. I want to check with folks if we were to sort of formalize this and adopt it at the next council meeting. What friendly amendments would you make to it? How is this landing? Kelly, you said this felt pretty good, and I assume that means it feels pretty aligned with what the Just Transitions have been trying to do. But other reactions, Secretary Moore?
I feel like one of the critiques or concerns that's been raised most often is people wanting the council to respond in real time to their comments. And not that I'm advocating for that. I think that that's challenging with 23 members to have us be able to respond with a single voice. But I think we need to have real clarity around that as we move into this next phase of the work too, like some expectations if folks are providing comment or submitting written comments, what our plans are in terms of a responsiveness summary. And I use those words just knowing that those are the way state government approaches public comment on larger dockets. I'm not sure we would be able, again, to do that here because we may not have full consensus. But I do think making sure we're all on the same page about that and then communicating that effectively at the start of each public comment period is going to be really important because, on multiple occasions, we've been asked to respond in real time. And I know it's a point of frustration.
Yeah. Thanks, Secretary Moore. Jared?
Thanks, David. Couple of thoughts. On the last bullet point, I support that approach. I think that whatever we can do to help welcome and encourage, a broader cross section of commenters. So I think often we hear from the same voices on the same topics frequently, and that's fine and good. But I think if there are folks who don't regularly provide public comment, providing a space for them to do so, I support that approach. I would also say on the proposal around dedicating the first 10 minutes of council meetings to reviewing comments received since the last meeting, I think it's important, and I agree with creating a space for reviewing the comments provided between meetings. I'm hesitant about kicking off the meeting that way, and I wonder if that could be paired with the start of the public comment period. Like before we open it up to public comment, provide a summary of the public comments received, but that may be in the middle of the meeting. The reason I say that is because oftentimes what the comments are received about may or may not be relevant to the agenda items that we have as a council, and can then create significant challenges around the timing of responding to them or wanting to dig into those questions as they come up. And so, you know, if we kick off a meeting with public comments on subjects that aren't related to the first couple of things on the agenda that we need to get through in terms of, you know, all of the work we have to do to prepare the cap by July, I just wonder if it could be, you know, not helpful in terms of alignment and flow of the meeting. And I think pairing the received public comment with the provided public comment in the same part of the agenda might be a better approach.
Thanks, Jared. Yeah, I'm just taking notes, and then let's figure out if you as a steering committee want to suggest together to do these things. Kelly?
Yeah, that's a neat idea, Jared, to do the public comment thing right at the beginning. We got since last time. I think that's a good place to put it. There are a couple things here that and I'm sorry I had to miss the last council meeting, but if we're going to adopt as a council the more fleshed out thing that we have been using in our steering or in our subcommittee meetings, that outlined a little bit different process of having public comment after council was discussing something and before they made a decision on something. And so there might be multiple public comment periods if we choose to follow that. So just something to consider, so people can comment on something that just happened rather than have to think about it and hold it for another hour until the public comment period in the middle of the thing. And then if there's another big decision that happens after the public comment period, they don't have a chance to weigh in. So that's a thought. The other thought I had, to what Secretary Moore was saying, it is really tricky to comment in real time. However, I do think we could probably come up with some basic ideas of when we respond. Like if someone asks a direct question that we can just answer, saying thank you for your comment isn't really that's where it feels really like, oh, come on, you didn't even listen. So if there's a specific question that we can just answer quickly, I think we should do it. And if there's, you know, I do think also, and this can get a little tricky also, but like fact checking, if someone says something that's just straight up not true and we know that, possibly setting the record straight before the end of the meeting might be a good way to go. Again, that can get a little tricky because that could really be stepping on some toes and hurting some feelings. So not sure exactly how to like put that in writing and make it feel respectful and all of that. But those were two thoughts I had for how to follow up in real time. And then, third would just be also to say, you know, thanks for your comments. You know, we'll make sure that sounds like that's something that cross-sector mitigation would really like to hear. We'll make sure they get that comment. Feel free to join their next meeting. Something like that, just to know that it's not falling on deaf ears and then going away.
Thanks, Kelly. Okay, Bram?
So agree with Kelly that 3 10-minute periods might be more productive than 1 30-minute period, allowing a period of public comment before each kind of major decision section of an agenda. I do think there's value in the comments that come in between meetings. I do think there's value in starting the meeting with those because some of them may not be relevant to the first few topics, but some of them might be on the other side. And I think it's probably valuable for counselors to have received that public feedback before we address topics to which they are addressed.
Thanks, Bram. Yeah, it's a dilemma there, isn't it? Secretary Moore?
Yeah, I think if we're going to do either of those things, we have to be very clear with managing expectations. If we review comments received up front, it's just to receive, not to discuss, because I worry, as Jared indicated, that it could get away from us and we end up spending time discussing things that aren't. sort of the focus for that day, and we've gotten an inordinate amount of work to do over the next few months. And then in terms of breaking it up into 3 sections, I do worry there are a handful of folks that regularly comment, and it puts a lot of pressure on you, David, if we're going to do that, to try to pass make sure that multiple voices are being heard, and that we don't end up hearing from the same people 3 separate times on the agenda, unless they're the only ones who raise their hands and seek to participate. But I do think that puts a lot of pressure on the facilitator team, to make sure we're trying to balance the opportunities people have to speak in the meeting, as opposed to using one of the other comment tools. The other thing I would put out there is, I think perhaps as part of each one of these meetings before the public comment process starts, reminding folks what the other options and opportunities are, whether it's the voicemail or email in real time, but specifically that this entire report will be put out for public comment. And there will be facilitated meetings dedicated to public comment. And I think making sure that we're raising and maintaining awareness that we have plans for significant engagement around the draft report is also really important. And so that folks don't feel like this is their only opportunity to have their voice heard.
Thanks, Julie. So if I were to try to synthesize this, sorry, someone trying to jump in? What I'm taking away on this is it's important to communicate a bunch of things clearly, right? Communicate the expectation, what people can expect in terms of real-time response or not. We should give our own selves some guidance about what we want to be responding to in real time. You'll notice that I will typically create a space afterwards for counselors to say, hey, counselors, any quick reactions to what you're hearing? So I could continue to do that. Kelly's suggestion of, but for a time-limited piece, Kelly's suggestion of if there are specific questions and those are easily answered, that's an opportunity, an expectation, an opportunity, we can do that. But I think, as Secretary Moore says, as a group of 23 counselors, it is very challenging to have like a response to public comment in real time, right? So I think us transmitting that clearly to folks will be helpful. In terms of the timing of when to do this like summary of comments received in between meetings, what I'm taking away is there's pros and cons of putting it in different places. If we put it at the front, we just want to be clear, we don't want to send ourselves off track. If we put it in just before the public comment, maybe if there's things that are relevant for the sections before that, we maybe lift those up as we get into those sections and be like, hey, as you'll hear in just a moment, the public comment, we had some things come in about this very topic, here they are. So maybe we could lift those up if we do that. And I'm welcome if folks feel strongly one way or the other. And then in terms of multiple comment periods around decision-making, I wonder, I'm hearing both things here. And I appreciate, Julie, you saying it's extra burden on us if we're trying to like move around the, different voices. I wonder, given the essence of you all as a council now, the core decision you're making is about getting this draft document out the door in late March. And so within each meeting, like individual little micro decisions, I'm not sure how important it is to line up public comment directly with those. So my inclination is to do a single comment in the middle of a meeting, a comment period in the middle of the meeting, make it longer, give signal that you're going to get plenty of time, so you're going to try to weave in as many people as possible. That would be my inclination, but Kelly and others, I'd be welcome thoughts about how to do that well. Kelly?
Yeah, I was thinking something along the same lines, like depending on what kinds of comments we receive in between meetings and whether they're relevant for the meeting we're about to have. Doing it at the beginning, just here's what came in, doing it during specific sections. Same with the multiple public comment periods. I think I think being a little bit flexible and looking at our agenda and saying, oh, looks like we actually have 2 really big decisions that are different. Let's do 2 public comment periods. Or it's all just one, there's a lot here. It's the biggest decision is, are we going to be advancing this draft? and we'll do one big comment period. Yeah, I think we can be flexible with it, and I think just holding the values and principles behind this and keeping with that, and then just trying to make sure whatever we're hearing is received at a useful time in our meeting. So I think that we can be flexible, and the steering committee can probably help with that as we're putting agendas together. Hey, maybe we should have two public comment periods.
Yeah, that sounds really great, Kelly. And I think if we can write down, I can write down this sort of more in a principled approach. I just realized I was still sharing. If I could write this down in a more principled approach, that gives you as steering committee some flexibility to say, yeah, for this one, we'll do it this way. Okay. All right. Any other input on this? I will write this up and we can take a more formal approval moment in the council on this. But any other final reflections on this? Okay. All right, so the next thing on the agenda, let me just pull back pull up our agenda again so folks can see it. Is about the writing assignments. And just so you know, we are running super late, aren't we? Are folks able to spend a little bit more time with today?
I was wondering if we should do public comment now, since we're
Yeah.
at the end of our meeting, and then go back to this other stuff in case folks have only blocked from the public have only blocked an hour.
I think that's a great idea. And if folks can stick with us, again, this is stuff we've gone through before a little bit, and this is kind of perfunctory. So I will take comment now. And Annette, I see raised her hand. Annette, jump in. And Matthew, yep. Hi, Annette.
Hello. So I have a few comments on your public comment discussion. What happens to the comments that are submitted through the website?
Yeah, so I can just say there is, they come into the Climate Action Office and there's a process for summarizing them.
So in
That's
the
what we're talking
past,
about now is how we present those back to council.
when this was first set up, the website enabled everything that was submitted to be seen by the public. So I would submit all kinds of things and I could see when it was submitted, and I could also see when I made a mistake and I didn't do it right, and then things like documents didn't go through. So I find that it is a little bit of a black hole now, where you're invited to submit comments, but nobody has a clue from the public's perspective what happens to them. I would think that it would be beneficial for everyone to be able to see all the comments that are being submitted, and I think you should go back to putting that in place. Regarding the public comment at meetings, as someone who is often one of the only commenters, I can see that this new plan might exclude me. However, I also feel that my comments are always on point and short. And I will tell you that I make every effort to turn people out to these meetings, and people just don't show up. My one concern about, I have a couple of concerns about what you're discussing. I really like the idea of being able to comment periodically on what you've just talked about. That helps the public focus on what you're talking about. And if you're trying to add it all up into one comment in the middle of the meeting, then that means that you're not able to comment on what happens after that. And it also means that comments are going to get longer because people, like I'm doing right now, because you all covered a lot of stuff, I'm having to cover a lot of different things. So I like the idea of the 3 separate comment periods, or being flexible and following the comments, or allowing the comments after specific topics are taken up so that people can speak. And I'm all in favor of more voices being heard. If I have something to say, I would like the opportunity to say it, as I think other people who regularly attend the meetings would too. I wouldn't want to be excluded, but I'm always happy to step aside. But I do find that in some of these meetings, especially somewhere a special interest group gets hold of it, you have the same people saying the same things over and over and over again, especially as you get closer to the final part of this. So I appreciate the opportunity to comment, and I do appreciate the challenges with it. And as far as responding, I never consider I have gotten much in the way of a response to anything I've said. I do think that especially as this climate action plan gets finalized, I could see, for instance, there is a need to respond if people raise specific issues as I have about, say, appliance standards. There needs to be a response to that. If our comments are not considered or taken, the Agency of Natural Resources does responsiveness comment documents. Maybe that needs to be included in this. So thank you. That's the best I can do at the moment.
Thanks, Annette. Appreciate those reflections. Anyone else want to make, who's joined us this morning, wants to make a quick comment? Matthew?
Yes, I do. It's about the location. Unfortunately, there's a big equity issue in that one. I want to be straight. Not everything has to be happening in Montpelier, Vermont, because I'm seeing this from an equity standpoint for myself, and then other communities that are outside that working establishment of government. Not everybody lives in Montpelier. Let's be honest. And taking that into consideration, like myself and possibly Kelly Klein, which she's on there too as well. Me and her live the farthest from Montpelier. It's going to take me 4 hours there, 4 hours back, just to be in person. Which I'm a person with disability. I require and request American with Disability Act to keep and hold the virtual options, in my opinion, because that's a way to make everybody feel included. And like I said, with the last caller that says, I don't mind leaving if there's no equity involved here, because that doesn't show the true face of Vermont. Because Vermont has equity. Where equity lies, if you're going to exclude members, that in-person option is a no-go in my opinion, for weather safety and safety of climate council members and subcommittee members. That's not a viable option. So that's my take on the public comment here with the location. Everything has to be in Montpelier, Vermont. That's not equity at all. That's making the stigmatization, of saying everything happens in Montpelier. That's really not the case of Vermont statewide. Everybody has a part to play. And my part is to make sure equity is enshrined in this. If there's no equity, then you might as well just close up right now and don't even talk about it. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Matthew. Okay, others who have joined us today? Okay. Kelly, yep.
Yes, for clarifying question, though, I see Matthew just left. Will there be a virtual option?
Yes, for sure, 100%.
That was my
Yeah.
understanding. We've always
Yeah.
done that. So, great. Yeah, I just wanted to make sure that was still happening, because that I agree, it's very important. It's, driving from Grand Isle County all the way to Montpelier isn't fun. Neither is driving from Bennington all the way to Montpelier or the Northeast Kingdom. It's, so I appreciate that.
Yeah, thanks, Kelly, for clarifying that. Yeah, no, absolutely. Okay, just a few other things so then we can sign off, and thanks everyone for your patience and being a little bit going over a little bit. One is on writing assignments. We've looked at this before. There's nothing new here. If Jane were here, she would just be emphasizing the structure of what we're talking about, which is in the main body of this report will be the priority actions in chapters on each of the topical areas. We have writing leads on those. And in those chapters, we're not going to do the full chart of pathway strategies and actions. That will be a table sort of below as an annex that has our full strategies, pathways, and actions as a consolidated table. And up above, we'll have priority actions and then chapters that speak to what we're trying to do in each of these topical areas. That's all that I think we were trying to say. The writing assignments haven't changed. It's really going to be a heavy lift to get to March 1st with this, right? With all these different pieces. So, if there's anything else we need to say about this, we can talk about it on Monday. But the idea is like, we're gonna really need help from all of you to get all these chapters written by March 1st so that we can review them and be ready to release. Any quick questions on that and what we're trying to do here? Okay, great. And then the final thing here is about we have new subcommittee members and counselors thanks to appointments. So David Mears was just appointed and has agreed to co-chair the Rural Resilience and Adaptation Subcommittee. And we're very happy about that. And then Dahlia, who's been a member of the Rural Resilience and Adaptation Subcommittee, is now on the council appointed by the legislature. So we just wanted to flag that. You all as a steering committee are supposed to do the sort of formal approval of subcommittee appointments. And so you would formally say, yes, great, thank you, David, for serving on the Rural Resilience and Adaptation Subcommittee in a leadership role. So unless I hear any concerns about that, let's treat that as okay. Just let me pause for any concerns about these updates. Okay. Great. Okay. So thanks everyone for hanging in a little extra long on this. Just as a reminder, what you're going to see today, a survey going out to counselors with the priority actions and those sort of 3 options about how to react to them. You're going to see the legislative report go out to all counselors today with a request to comment by the end of Wednesday. And you'll see by Thursday an updated legislative report and the agenda for Monday. Ram, is that our goodbye?
This is, yes, the teary-eyed goodbye. Actually, probably not. Our committee assignments will not become clear for another couple days, but there's a decent chance that I will end up on energy and technology. And as you all know, there is a lot of conversation around whether the Global Warming Solutions Act should be amended to stretch the timeline out, and whether the provision allowing any Vermonter or Vermont organization to have standing to sue to enforce the provisions of the GWSA should remain or should be stripped out. And I will say there's a lot of sentiment in the building that will make doing anything that adds to the cost of fossil fuels for Vermonters difficult. So, the Affordable Heat Act, I think there's a lot of discussion around can we rework a plan that does not add to the cost of fossil fuels while still making it easier for Vermonters to transition to non-fossil fuel options. So lots of work to be done. I would not be at all surprised if I find myself at climate council meetings, and if I find you all at energy and technology committee meetings. So I'm looking forward to continuing this work in my new role. It has been an honor and a pleasure. Thank you all.
Thanks, Bram. We definitely will miss you.
Thank you, Bram.
Andrea, anything quick?
Yeah, real quick, and maybe it's just something we can talk at the council meeting on Monday, but just as a co-chair, wondering what messaging will go to the subcommittees and about their continued role in this work. I'm assuming we'll just reach out to the people who are drafting the relevant sections of the climate action plan and serve as a resource for them, but just kind of wanted to put that out there because I think people are wondering what's
Got
next.
it. Yeah. Why don't we talk about that on Monday? I think that's a great thing to talk about.
Okay. Great. Thanks.
Thanks, Andrea. Okay. Thanks, everybody. Thanks for going a little bit late. And we'll see you next week. Thanks, everyone, for joining. Take care. Bye-bye.